Hi, my name is Michael Weekly, and I'm here to discuss the different chapters that we've learned in tourism. Firstly, dark tourism. Emotional triggers was a concept and a theory that we discussed here. There are an increasing opportunity for travelers to immerse themselves in unpleasant experiences of the past, specifically ones that have moral dilemmas and triggers. These individuals can get into hot spots, and if they're not properly managed, if they don't properly identify and know what's going to happen, it can really cause damage psychologically, as well as physically, to people that don't know quite how to handle what they're about to experience. The reality is, tourism is on the rise, and we find ourselves in a position to either recognize and define its value, or we can judge and make moral references to it. Death is as much as part of life as breathing, said Moat et al., and we note the competing histories and how Western values can influence how and what is accurately told, which can lead to locations focusing on politically disenfranchised, socially underrepresented, and racially marginalized peoples being overlooked. This is morally and ethically inaccurate, and it's not a description of the reality. Furthermore, we focused on the majority of the examples of African American experiences, which highlight that there are few representations beyond atrocities and moral questions that give a brief but not always accurate history of the true experience. When we refer to African Americans, often in history, it's in representation to slavery, and we do not value enough their contributions and their accolades. The example that I want to give that's connected to the U.S. is the 9/11 Memorial. Before 9/11 happened, it was a place of business, some tourism, and a little bit of activity. After 9/11, it's a thriving, small economy now, which is also an emotional reminder, but also attracts lots of tourists. So there's sort of a unique influence on tourism from the dark perspective, how it actually changed and redid that whole area where the 9/11 building used to be. But now as a memorial, it's full of restaurants, hotels, so it really has changed the whole geography. Secondly is tourism, terrace tourism, a concept that tourism is a marketing strategy. The tourism industry is a soft target for terrorist activities because high-profile economic values that give these attacks also attract much media and social media attention. Terrorists intending on making a political and ideological statement use common tourist destinations to celebrate or defy ideologies represented and challenge the values of those attacked. The religious significance of many of these sites, like Istanbul, Turkey, Germany, and most in the Middle East, show that the disdain for those who represent either modern or westernized form of their religion can still be attacked within their own parameters. The history also of these places being targeted and how often or common it does makes them more valuable as a marketing strategy for these terrorist groups. They're able to spread their message to a large group, media attention from all over the world comes, and they take responsibility, therefore creating an environment of fear. Las Vegas this weekend has always, been a soft target for terrorism, and it was proven when a white terrorist attacked within his own country, because it really did attract visitors from all over the globe and global attention. Tourism and community development. An opportunity for revitalization requires that we measure exactly the value of the revitalization versus the negative cultural impact. The theory set up by Zhu, Kerstetter, and Bazindi are examples in China where revitalization happened and community change happened and there was financial growth. However, the cultures were lost. There was significant depression and loss of identity. Also, relocation by the elders and different families that had lived in those areas for generations. They were placed in different places and they didn't feel comfortable and they didn't acclimate. Above and beyond that, just because you've created a new and accessible and secure situation doesn't mean that those all have accessibility. They're sort of like window shopping into what everyone else is able to have. There's also increased rent prices, gas prices, food prices, because you have this increase in tourism. So the displacement happens. They're uncomfortable and unfamiliar in the communities. They have no power in these cases because they have to thrive, and they lose their sense of community and cultural identity. Tourists bringing in the money to these places often are not concerned with the cultural identity, even though at the beginning it's an attraction for why people go there. Gentrification happens. People are not motivated. They're not involved from the decision making process from the bottom up. It's all top down, and there's no value to their opinion. Their voices are not heard, and even in their own communities, they suddenly become a minority. An example of this is the High Line in New York City, which was an old railroad track that ran across the city, and it was considered a place where uninhabitable people didn't want to live there. It was next to places that were considered unsafe, drug-ridden, and there was a lot of minorities living there. And so what happened is, as the High Line became more popular, coffee shops, little different shops started being built up along the way. However, this gentrified the area, and those people that owned small salons, small businesses, couldn't afford to live there anymore, couldn't afford to have their businesses anymore. They left, and more wealthy, generally white settlers took over, gentrified, and now the High Line, which used to be an area for poor people, is now for only rich white visitors. Or rich visitors, and that certainly is not a valuable community development. Culturally, although financially, the city would argue that they brag that it's been a great benefit to the city. With disability in tourism, really the concept that stepped out the most to me was how we are measured in society based on our social identity and how a disability can influence our value. The connection with success and social identity often is in close relationship to how we and where we travel. And when a person has a disability, then their arc of social accessibility is measured differently, which causes the person to avoid travel altogether. Um, the chapter really pointed out that a supportive family network can help decimate that, and participation with the airlines, the people traveling, tourist companies, if they can try to be as inclusive as possible, um, then they really hit the mark of those living with disabilities and their ability to travel. However, usually and generally more alternative options are offered, but there's a loss of vacation acceptance and time. And at the end, people with disabilities are looking for the same as with people with abilities, is that you're just looking for time to relax, time to explore, and time to really get an idea of where you're going. Airports and hotels are required in the U.S. To be disabled, to be friendly to disabled people and to accommodate. However, tour companies, high intensity vacations still don't have that. And what's happened though is that these smaller like groups and smaller societies for people with disabilities, like the blind tourist agency or the deaf tourist agency, is now attracting people with disabilities and creating their own itineraries for those. However, you have to question, do they still get the same opportunities, and is it just feel segregated? Thank you. Bye.